This video will give you everything you need to start a business. You don't need a course. You don't even need my free course. Through the interview with Chris from Skyrocket Coffee, you will learn about how you select your idea, what you need to consider in terms of experience and your confidence, how you plan, how you execute on that plan, what it takes for you to get that initial success so you can keep the ball rolling and don't give up. Chris, super excited to have you, and looking at your page and your website, going through your stuff, I think you're doing some incredible things, and I'm really excited to share that with the people who will be watching this. Initially, because you're based in Texas, correct?
Correct.
Is that where you're from originally?
No, we actually just moved out here just a little over a year ago from the Northwest. We were both born and raised in Oregon, just outside of Portland, and a couple of small towns of Tigard, Oregon, and Newberg, Oregon. My wife, Crystal, is from Newberg, and I was from Tigard. And we were two people that realized that we were in a dream state of talking about always wanting to live in sunshine and making this, move to somewhere where there's more sun and more of our water activities, more of a sunny season. And we kind of arrived around 2020. We realized that there was an opportunity to make that happen. So we went to work in doing so. And we moved out here, and this is where we decided to start a business together. This will be the first entrepreneurship together. I've had other businesses, and she was a trainer on dental imaging software. So she was a regional trainer. She flew all over and trained people on those complex digital imaging software that they use in the dental offices to make sure your root canals and things are going in the right places and all that fun stuff.
Cool. And so before we jump into some of the things you mentioned there, for your own side of things, what is the product that you're selling now, and how long is it that you've been in business with this? You mentioned 1 year, is that correct?
We're just crossing over our first year of actual being in business selling roasted coffee. So we have a unique roasting process where we use an air roasting machine that is much different than traditional methods, in the sense that it is an open chamber roasting model, like that really mimics the old popcorn poppers, if the audience is familiar with that, where it suspends the popcorn kernels in the air and then they pop. That's sort of the same thing. It suspends the beans up into the air and roasts them from all sides evenly, and removes all the things that give coffee that burnt bitter taste, the seed skins and the things that get burnt up in the chambers and reabsorbed in the bean. Our process takes all that out and leaves a smooth, true coffee flavor at the end. And that's what we're doing that's so different and special, of what we decided to bring to the marketplace over what's currently available. And so we came down here, and it was a process of getting first the residents located and settled. Then it was work with the real estate agent to find a property and for our operation. And then we located that in Bertram, which is just outside of Austin. And that's where we decided to set up, because the property owner out here was just fantastic, and they were really great to us. And so we decided to call this home base. And so we went into construction. So the building wasn't even, what I'm saying is like why it's only been a year in true operation is the building wasn't built. So for a few months while we got out here, it was just, we were waiting for construction to complete, power to be put in, lights to be turned on, equipment to arrive. All of our equipment, our machines were coming from South Africa. We had equipment coming from overseas. We had stuff coming from all over the place. And so it took about 4 months before we even got all the things necessary to go into production. And then from there, during that process was also building the website and all the back end, the digital side of the business, because our design is direct to consumer. So you can find us on Amazon, you can find us on our website and things of that nature. But all of that had to be built, and it's just like all of it's a lot like building a house. If that's the best analogy that I would give somebody, is that the process is, while you may not see everything all the time because there's nothing always physical in the digital realm to look at, it's being built, and it takes time. that you maybe want to account for during your business planning. So it took,
Yeah.
took about, I would say it probably took 6 months of just that process. And that also included us working out, getting the equipment, getting some training on the equipment, dialing in our recipes, going through the packaging process and the production process, and ironing out how that's going to actually look. So it's like you can have all the ideas, but you have to put that thing into play. And so there's a lot of design. And for the viewers, I love the movie Founder with Michael Keaton about the McDonald's story, specifically the McDonald's brothers when they go to the tennis court playground and they get up on the ladders, and they're one of them's down below drawing and the other one's up on the ladder, and they're showing the people how it's going to work, and they're like how they're trying to make their efficient McDonald's model, the speedy service model. I probably didn't get that 100% accurate, but it's something along that line. And that's exactly what you go through. We got all the equipment, we got the raw green beans in, we got the packaging in, and then it was like, okay, now we got to go through the process and figure out what's the most efficient way to do this, so that when we begin to hire, we actually know what we're going to hire for and how we're going to implement new hires into the system, how we're going to initiate them, bring them in, train them. We had to go through that ourselves. So we took, that time to develop that in a crash course basis. I did come from some experience in this, so I do want to put that out there. It wasn't brand new, so I understood what the learning curve looked like and what that can look like for people joining your operation. And taking that into account, I thought about how things went in these previous endeavors versus how I wanted to do it here, and what I'd learned, and applied that as we move forward. So after that, then we went into business. We actually turned the open sign on. We allowed, we had our initial push. We had our initial marketing push to get out into the marketplace and let people know. And I'm kind of doing all the talking here. I hope that's okay. But the push into the marketplace was also another learning curve, because you go with your ideas, right? You have your ideas, and you think they're if you don't have a lot of experience in them, you think that they're the way to go, and you get out there and you try a few things and you don't get the results, or you do get the results, and so you sort of fine tune it as you go. And we went through that process, and now we're a little bit down the road after about a year in. We're hitting that groove, if you will.
Cool. A lot of interesting topics you mentioned here. Before we dive more into what you just talked about, what is the background that you come from?
Yeah, so we have. So I personally have some catering experience from way back. My mom had a catering company. We used to do large corporate picnic catering, anything from 300 to 2,000 people. So efficiency was really the name of that game. And so I learned sort of what production looks like at a large amount of people, and getting the efficiency to a point where we would serve so quickly that the whole team could sit, the whole corporate team could sit down and eat together. And that was always our goal, is to get, that was the experience that you really wanted to deliver to the corporation for their team picnics, is that they could get everybody sitting at the same time and having conversation and talking and enjoying. Because day-to-day businesses, that's not how that works for them. So they wanted to make a really special event. That's what our goal was there. So I learned how to really tune in a service line so that it's fast. So that helped. The biggest where I cut my teeth was actually in the legal cannabis market. I was a commercial cannabis farmer indoors, and that's where I learned a ton of my business experience. And we were on the cutting. So we were one of the first farms in the Oregon market to turn recreational. I'm not saying the first, but one of a few that went recreational out of the gate. And I went from using a standard of high pressure sodium, big light bulb style growing that consumes a ton of electricity, to an innovative approach of LED. We changed the business on the fly into this model. Went from 8,000 square feet of single level growth to double canopy and doubling up our volume that we could produce out of there, building teams that could actually handle keeping things alive. I always like the analogy. We weren't making pizzas, meaning if you screwed up the dough or you did something wrong, it was just a couple bucks and you threw it in the trash. When you made mistakes at this level, you made multi-$1,000 mistakes. And it was a game that you couldn't afford to lose. It's such a difficult marketplace. It was such a crowded marketplace. You really had to squeeze every bit of production out of your facility you could, while maintaining a high enough top shelf quality that the product would sell at the end of the harvest. And those two things were very challenging to do. We did them very successfully for a number of years. The double, as we called it, the double decker growth was the last 4-5 years of our production, 15 years altogether in that industry. Was happy to make the exit. It was a lot of learning, and it was great learning and a great business. For somebody who was a bit of a serial entrepreneur but didn't have any real success in anything, this was the first time I had some success in what I was doing. And so it taught me a lot about the business world, and the cannabis world allowed, I always like to say it had enough financial cushion in it to make a lot of mistakes and to learn from them. Not all businesses allow you to do that. You get into these things, you're personally invested into them. And if you don't have the prior experience, it can be very challenging to get it on the job. So that business allowed me to grow at a rapid pace, but also cushion the mistakes along the way. Things that I was thinking were making a difference, whether it be in the marketing aspect or whether it be making a change in the growing model, that just didn't. But I also learned a lot of valuable things about building teams, creating a successful culture, to keep motivated even in the face of challenging times, which that market and that industry had a lot of challenging times. If you're familiar with it at all, it's not federally legal. Okay. So it's state by state, and your borders are the state in which you operate in. It makes it very challenging when there's overproduction, which often it currently is the case. And that's why everybody's screaming for federal legalization, as they want to spread that overproduction out across the United States. So when we're operating in those tight markets, and there wasn't there was more production than there was consumption, it gets to be very challenging. You have to do things very, very high end. You have to really set yourself apart, and that becomes, but thankfully that's always been my commitment. I'm one of high standards, and I was always and always am committed to putting out a great product. I don't want to go into a marketplace. I mean, you think coffee is not a lot different in that sense. There's lots of roasters out there. So, one of our thoughts was we had to really make sure that we did something different coming into the marketplace, so we didn't end up just like everybody else, that we'd actually have something that we could market, and something that the customer can actually experience for themselves that is truly tastes different than what's traditionally that's available in the marketplace traditionally or currently. And so that was kind of, those things are very paralleled industries in that fashion. While the reason for coffee was because coffee has a huge market as far as how many people consume it. It doesn't have the regulations that cannabis did, where I was stuck in the state of Oregon for my sales. Here I can actually leverage the internet and use the internet to my advantage of building a business. But that's where I came from. The culture, team building, also, just the responsibilities of managing over 1,500 live plants at any given time. There's probably even more than that, honestly. It was a lot, and it was a roller coaster, but I learned a ton. Like I said, it's where I got to cut my teeth and really learn business and learn what it really takes. And I made an exit, and thankfully that's what really pushed a lot of this to happen for us, is that we'd been going and going, and I had asked her to give me 5 years to make it work. I'd been in it, like I said, 10 previous. I had 5 more, and we came to another point in the industry where it had started to take another downturn, and it didn't look like it was going to recover well. And truthfully, it hasn't. It didn't. It won't. And we saw that firsthand. I got really involved with the committees, the associations, and seeing, are they really trying to fix the problems we're experiencing, or are they going to continue? And they were going to continue. So we were able to say, hey, you know what? This is the time. Let's make an exit while we can, and let's see what we want to do next. And that's what brought us to doing coffee. One thing for the audience, especially if you are, because I never know, we never know who's listening or watching. If it does come to the cannabis industry, that's some of the things that you really want to pay attention to, is how the local government is managing the industry at that level. If they're not showing signs of, like if they're just going to continue to issue licensing for production and these types of things, you're always going to be in this flux where you can't really build a successful model, because at every turn they issue 500 new licenses, 500 new companies come in, they bump up a production, make a bunch more mass production. It kills it kills the local economy as far as the revenues, and drops the price like a crop in like farmers deal with regular farming. The difference is cannabis is really, really expensive to farm correctly. It's very expensive. It's very labor intensive. You've got a lot of money into the product before you harvest it. You have to put a big investment in, and you got to know what you're doing to get it out the other side if you're going to be on the manufacturing side. So be careful when you're choosing businesses that are heavily regulated. Really understand the regulation and understand what it's going to take to manage the regulation ongoingly, because it's not something just like, this stuff was changing every single day for us. We had to find out, we get the new email, get the new update, dig into it. I mean, before I wasn't even able to hardly read, for other things, because I spent so much time with my nose in what is the new changes that I have to adapt to keep my business in compliance. And so it's just again, because of this model of podcast, is something that somebody out there maybe want to take into consideration is, am I prepared to manage for the ongoing new, it's a new industry, it has no established history. It's going to change regulations on you weekly, monthly, quarterly. It's going to continue to do so. And you want to be prepared going into that. So for us, looking at having that experience in that, her with her experience, us deciding, hey, we want to do something as a together this time, because she wasn't really into my business. And so as a husband and wife, you really want to make sure the spouse is on board with what you're doing, or you have clear communication if they're not, or, you get this settled before you get into it. We decided to do a team build here on this business model, come down to Texas. We were wanting to go somewhere with more sun, with more lakes. We like water activities. We like to get outside. We wanted outdoor stuff, and we wanted lots of new things to do. And so, and by choosing Texas was also for the business side of it. Texas is very business friendly. It's one of the best states to start a business in currently. And it's got we're just outside of Austin. So another thing to consider is what the population looks like, where you're going into, because it will make a huge difference. I was coming out of what we didn't even realize, what we didn't know, but Portland, Oregon is a tiny little, city. It's tiny economically. Otherwise, it's tiny. And you come down here to Austin, and Austin's like 10 times as big, and just the outer areas. One of the towns that's close to us is like 4 of our towns put together, population wise. That stuff makes a huge difference when you're looking at the numbers, when you're looking at what's possible. And, for us being a startup, and while we had some investment money, we invest our own money into this, we needed to be somewhere where we had a lot of opportunity, whether that's to be able to get out in front of people, be a part of events. Austin's well known for all its events. And these are all things that we took into calculation when we came down here, so that we kind of had an idea why we were doing it.
Cool. How did you, I imagine you decide that you want to do something with coffee, right? How do you end up deciding on Skyrocket Coffee?
That's a good question. So funny story. We would have these, both of us would come home. I think I started it. She's not here to defend that, but I think I started it. I would come home after these hard days, and I'd drive by these coffee shops on the way home, and I'd look at them, and I was like, man, that looks like the business. You got everybody drinks coffee. If you have a nice little establishment, it looks like it's laid back. Coffee's been around for years upon years. There's no change in regulation. There's nothing crazy really going on. People don't change coffee beans. Farmers, it takes like 7 years for a farmer to get fruit out of a coffee tree. So they're not going to jeopardize that with a lot of new, variations. And the reason I bring that up is I was dealing with an industry that wanted a new product offering every harvest. And could you imagine? You have to pick a plant that you've never grown before, never gone through its little idiocracies or sorry, I'm not even using the right word there, but all its different little things that to produce it properly and to make it top shelf, it has all these little deals that you have to dial in, and you get no runway at it. You just have to throw it into production and figure it out. And that's what it became. And I thought, I don't want to ever do this again in the next business. And so I was looking at coffee. I was like, gosh, this thing kind of stays the same. You get good coffee offering. You maybe change your drink menu. But at the end of the day, it seemed, and I'm saying this, not that this was just at the time, seemed like a great business model, seemed like, something that would make a lot of sense and seemed a lot less stressful than what I was currently doing. Fast forward, I'd come home and I'd say this to her, and I'd say, oh, we just need to sell this and get a coffee shop. We just need to get out of this and get a coffee shop. We would joke about that. And then she would come home from her hard travels and say, I don't want to travel anymore. Airports are terrible. I don't like doing this. Hotel beds. Ugh. Let's go get a coffee shop. Yeah, let's do that. And so when it finally came down to it and we were like, hey, actually, we have an opportunity and maybe we should really consider this, we decided. But fast forward, we're moving. We're all our stuff's packed up. It's being shipped down here. We're each in separate vehicles, and we're both towing, and we head out, and we're coming into Texas from the west. We're coming in, and we come to this little town, or we're coming into this town, and she's like, I need a cup of coffee. I said, okay, I'm in the lead. Let me type in a coffee shop. I'll find us one. And we found this company that was called Longhorn Coffee at the time. It's since then been bought out by Free Reign. And if you're familiar with Free Reign is okay. They're a newer cut. They bought Longhorn Coffee, renamed it Free Reign, and they're involved with the character Rip from Yellowstone, the TV show. Carl Hauser, I think it's something Hauser. Anyhow, we walk into this coffee shop. I see the two different bags, and I see the shirts, and I'm going, what, guys, what's going on here? I see Free Reign, I see Longhorn. What do you guys do here? They're like, oh, well, we got bought out. And I said, well, tell me about that story. And they said, well, we're this little coffee shop. This is the only one we have. And I mean, it's tiny in a nowhere town. And the owner's had it for a while. He sold. And I said, well, what are they going to do with it? And she says, well, they're going to go direct to consumer, all internet sales. They're selling the roasted coffee. We roast it right here in the back. And I said, really? It's a very interesting model. And she gets her coffee and off we go. We get to the hotel later that night and we're both get out of the car about the same time. Why don't we just do roasting? Why don't we just do that? Because on our way down, we started to get really nervous about going into the coffee shop business because we were seeing a lot of hiring signs, closed lobbies. You had to go through drive-through. They didn't have a lot of people working, and we're thinking, man, on the onset, we didn't have enough investment money to really carry all the things we want to do. But if we go this direction and we build this out correctly, we can always come back. Should that be a goal of ours down the road, we can come back to that. But if we go this model, we don't have to carry all the heavy labor out of the gate as we go through the learning curve. And that's back to, when you're considering starting a business, there's things that you're going to go through, which is going to be a learning curve. And it kind of feels like the analogy people use often is like drinking out of a fire hose. You're going to be consuming a lot of information, learning on the fly. And, because you can prepare as best you can. You can prepare and that's the best thing you can do is prepare, and prepare. However, once you get out there on the field, sometimes things change. And some of the things you didn't even know you needed to prepare for. And so you have to learn those in order to be successful. You're going to have to, that's where that sacrifice comes in. That's where you spend those nights, evenings, even sometimes during the day, just consuming information to learn on the fly what you didn't know you needed to know. And so we knew there would be a learning curve. And with that model, we were both getting a little bit of cold feet going into a retail location because you don't really get a second shot at it. And truthfully, I don't know that we would have had the financial backing to pull off the amount of time you need to carry an operation like that, in the way of the overhead. And I'm not just saying the overhead to keep the lights on and the doors open. You also have to have a marketing budget to get people inside there. You need to have a location that has a high enough curb traffic or drive-by traffic that will actually support your business. Just a little caveat on that: make sure you're on the correct side of the road for that, especially if you're a coffee shop. You want to be on the correct side of the road so that people will pull in and buy their coffee and get back on the road headed towards where everybody works, not away from it.
Mm.
Those are like little things that you kind of you want to know about. And um, when you have that scenario, when you have the roadside operation and the overhead, it's expensive. So you get one shot and you want to make sure you get it right. And so that's kind of what that really is about, is like, we didn't have all of that. So we wanted to sort of step back, reevaluate, and see if we couldn't work this model and maybe make it into something like that down the road. And so that's what we ultimately decided to do, is to focus on doing this really, really well. Because when you get this part right, when your core ingredient is dialed in like ours is, it can make the other part a lot easier. If you want to be the all-in-one. We also have, part of what we do is wholesale. So we support people who have coffee shops already that are looking to maybe improve their coffee offering. We're there for them as well. And we've looked towards that more than we have considering our own operation in that aspect. Something you kind of, your business plan will be your business plan, but it also, at times, it'll have some refinement along the way.
And so, what led you initially to decide? Did the name just sound nice,
Oh,
or?
the name itself, Skyrocket Coffee. Yeah. Okay. So that came from her and I. We have a big commitment to self development. We're both very much in the self development world. And we were combining that element with the element of, this is a business that we wanted to have a fast track to success. And so we essentially went after many, 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 many different names and many pieces of paper written on. We came across this Skyrocket, and I was like, gosh, maybe we could use that, And then she said, so we start throwing it back and forth, and that's where we ended up landing on. It was Skyrocket Coffee. Is it's about upward trajectory. So whether it's your personal life and what you're doing to our business, that was the trajectory that we wanted to be on, and that's where the name
Cool.
ultimately came for.
Sounds very authentic.
Well, yeah, it's and it is kind of funny because, especially being in Texas and stuff, right where we're at, Central Texas, it's big. There's a lot of space programs out here, So you've got,
Mm.
everybody's here. You've got Elon, Firefly, Jeff Bezos's program. Everybody's here, and so a lot of people were like, "Oh, no, it didn't have anything to do with that. In fact, that was a happy accident, and it's really, again, something that's worked out really well for us." But it was that part was a happy accident. Skyrocket was really about the trajectory, So our life goals and our business goals being upward trajectory, and we wanted to skyrocket to them. We didn't want to come down here. This wasn't about coming and building a business over the next 20 years. This is about getting in, sacrificing, working day and night, over the weekends, whatever it takes to be successful out of the gate. And so we didn't, because we're both, one thing for the audience to understand is, we're both essentially, you're building a new business. And when you're doing that, you're starting over, and we're in our 40s. So this isn't a 20-year project. You don't, we're not playing like we have all this time to do this. We want to get in and build, and so that we can take the next chapters of our life. So that was where that all sort of stemmed from, and that's how the name was developed.
And it's also really cool that you get to leverage the previous experience you have to sort of give yourself the opportunity to choose a fast tracked approach. Whereas if you came and this was your first attempt, likely you would be forced to, take it more as it came, right? But the reality of it being your second or third or fourth try, whatever it is, right, gives you that
100%.
option.
100%. I mean, that's a couple of things that you touch on there that's really important. One, people say, "Oh, make your passion your work, and you'll never work a day again." Well, yeah, that can be good and bad depending on what your passion is. I really think that choosing things that are parallel to your experience is really where it's at. So if you have really good experience in an area, don't negate that because you think you have to go do something you love. Being in business isn't always about like coffee is here's the thing. I'm passionate about making really great products and putting really great products into the marketplace. I'm passionate about helping people. I'm passionate about helping others succeed, other businesses, other people. We support literacy with a portion of our proceeds. That was a big part of this because her and I are both passionate self-development readers. We wanted to pay that gift forward. So the passion for me isn't actually necessarily coffee itself. It's all these other things around the coffee. Coffee is the vehicle. And so I
Mm,
think that's like a distinction that often gets overlooked because all you hear is passion project, passion project. Well, that that can lead you down a short road to a dead end sometimes too. You got to be very careful what you're really passionate about. There's lots of different things in business that you can choose that already you may already possess the experience for, especially if you're a great manager. Maybe you are really good at building teams and you're really good at putting culture together. Well, why go start a brand new business? Why not look at something, a franchise model, one that already has the other structures of the business already developed for you? All the marketing is taken care of for you. All the systems and processes are built. You really are just picking a location with a team of professionals that will help you find the sites, investing, and then applying the thing that you're amazing at to the business, which is building culture, building teams. That's another way to do business. And so I think that for us choosing coffee, a lot of what the business model looks like paralleled the cannabis industry in a lot of ways. So all my production systems and processes that I'd already built over years of experience and honing, and it's the same thing over here. The difference is there we finished a product and bagged it, into large bags and then sent it out. Here we do very similar. But we roast and then we bag it into smaller bags and ship it out. So it's a lot of that was the same. You know what I mean? And sourcing ingredients and sourcing and working with importers and working with people overseas to get the materials that we need. We were doing similar things with the products that we were using to make our cannabis in the other business. So I was already working with people overseas, getting cloth pots for, recyclable cloth pots for my plants, to the soil and the nutrients that I used were coming out of Canada. We were already sourcing things. We already had experience in these things. So it looked very parallel uh, as we got into it. And really it has been the biggest shift and the biggest learning curves for us was actually how online sales work and what our preconceived notions were to reality and how that went together. That was the things that we've learned most recently. The rest of it is it runs itself. Production timelines, production goals, projections, what we're going to need upcoming. All of that stuff was very similar. So I do agree that combining your experience is very important to whatever you choose. And looking at it from that aspect of what you're already doing may be more beneficial than trying to figure out, something that maybe you're passionate about or something. Is look at what the marketplace is needing and what expertise. I think identifying your own expertise is really critical. I think that's a good place to start. When you're doing that, and even as we've gotten into this, we've learned a ton about other ways of doing business that if I was going to tell anybody that's in this, area of curiosity and doing the research is definitely keep your eyes open and keep looking at things. Maybe attend a few expos, see what's out there. Not everything has to be started from scratch, and not everything has to be a passion project. You may find passion in different areas when you look around and see what's really available.
Yeah, and you've talked about experience and a lot, and about confidence in the business as the business model. How did that factor together and lead into a decision for you feeling confident that you did have something unique and valuable, or being competent or able to create a better product or a good product? How did you decide what was the right product based on the things you tried?
So okay, so there's a couple parts to that. Back in the previous business, I had learned a lot about the design world, and if you do look at cannabis from a marketing aspect, there's a few companies that have really uh, taken the lead and really developed some killer marketing and killer packaging. And so I'd already, and what I mean by that is it's like they came with such an outside the box application that it blew the industry away. And I'll tell you, one of the famous companies right now is named Cookies. And it's Berner's company and a bunch of investors that he got together and built this company. But if you looked at their packaging and what they did, prior to them, that really wasn't how things were done. And once they came into the marketplace, they changed the game forever and brought in more design, more flair, more fun. And that's what we brought when we realized, and we looked at coffee, and you look at coffee, and that's just now starting to become a thing. And we step as I've seen, just even in recently, like within the last couple of days, I've seen a couple of packages from other companies. I thought, wow, you guys are stepping it up. But if you look at your grocery store shelves right now, you're not going to see anything even remotely like what we're doing. Like with our packaging, our rocket beans, and the things we're doing, it's very it's outside the box of the traditional coffee bean plant tree packaging, very bland coloring, and things. It was just kind of boring to us. And I thought, if I'm going to go over there, I want to be a disruptor. I want to really stand out on shelves. I really want people to see our product and go, wow, I love that. I love how that looks. And so as we made that transition, that was one of the aspects that we learned previously coming into this. And I'm sorry, I'm getting a little off topic here. I was trying to bring this together, but the application from one industry to another made a lot of sense in how we were going to do things over here. So as far as quality goes, that's something that's just honestly, David, it's inherent. It's just something I can't do things the same as everybody else. Otherwise, I don't feel like there's anything special. I don't feel like I'm doing anything that's different. That what am I going to say to somebody? It's like, oh, well, I roast just like they do, but check my product out. That didn't sound good to me. So when we went looking, we had a couple of things in mind for our business model, which was we wanted to bring something to the shelves that wasn't like anything that was currently being offered. So we started to purchase from 25 of the top specialty roasters. We were purchasing their coffee on a regular basis to check for consistency, flavor, profiles. We were looking at it from all different angles. And we personally had some goals in mind around our machines that we wanted to be 100% electric. We didn't want to use the gas. We didn't want to go, I didn't want to have another energy source. It was like, if we can just be electric and we're down here in this sunshine where our goal's been to be, then we can move from electric equipment, we can move to solar power, and that is something that also adds, it solves it creates, it's a personal goal that I just wanted to have. I just wanted to do it. I thought, man, if you could have your whole operation running on solar power, it's your own deal. You're essentially off the grid on that, in that aspect, in that application. And that's exciting because you've removed a cost, but you've also done something really cool with regards to sustainability. And I really wanted that. I want to check that box. So we were looking for electric equipment during our search for this proper electric equipment, because that's well, it's been around the industry since I think the 70s, maybe a little earlier. Don't quote me on that one. It hasn't been very good until recent times. And when we went, so we were looking and looking, and we landed on this particular piece of equipment that was so different. So it operated so much differently than everything else. And we contacted the rep, sat down, had lunch with the rep, talked with them, and then they set up an opportunity for us to go look at one locally and see it in operation, see how it worked. And then we were able to check it out, and we made some coffee and we tested the coffee, and we were like, whoa, this is different. This actually tastes amazing. Wow, let's go. And so we went that route. That's kind of, so is from the previous experience of that business that we brought that learning and that experience over to this and applied it directly to it. So we brought our original designer from our previous company. And I'll tell you a fun little fact. You notice that everything's black and white. My wife and I love black and white, but I'll tell you from another aspect, black and white is a lot easier to work with when it comes to print than anything else. We had a full color logo before. It had, I think, 4 or 5 different colors to it. Ooh, anytime you had to go get print plates done, print plates cost an arm and a leg. And every time, so it's like if I want to have some t-shirts made, my print plate was probably like $350. And then my t-shirts were maybe a couple $100, it was crazy. I was paying more in print plates. And so I said, look, black and white stands the test of time, and it's super easy because you really only pay often for one color, if anything. I mean, really, you don't really get the heavy print plate charges because black and white's like the most basic colors they offer. But we applied that learning. We applied what we had seen other companies be very successful with as far as their packaging. And we brought our designer that we'd been working with for 10 years over with us that already knew how we worked. And so her and her company, they were able to dial us in quickly. And again, we were able to have packaging ready to go in less than a month. Our website took just maybe a couple of months to build, but we had brought these things over. So that was part of why, going to coffee wasn't such a outlandish or tough thing for us to do. Is we already had so much similarities that we were able to bring some teams over, and we were already able to bring ideas over and apply them immediately and be successful as we did so. And the process to get to that. So the process to get that quality product is not just the beans inside. I'll get to that, but the packaging itself, we wanted to source, and we had to do research, look at what everybody's doing, and look what the industry had to offer in packaging. So recyclability, one-way valves for to maintain freshness, resealability. Like, you get paper bags and you roll the tops and they're terrible. We have all resealable, packaging, so it extends the freshness of the product down to our K-cups. Our K-cups are recyclable. And that was one portion. Then when we got into the beans, we had personal things that were important to us that have come into play as we've grown. Being organic, I used to kind of turn my nose up to it. It's like, whatever. I'm really big on what I put, like health-wise, what you put in your body. Even when I was growing cannabis, our cannabis was some of the cleanest cannabis that's offered in the marketplace. We were very thorough about how we did things and very careful of how the finished product came out because of these things. So even there to here, it's same thing. So we source only certified organic, having my own farming understanding of what it takes to grow a plant. I'm able to understand what these farmers are going through, and they're growing certified organic in third world conditions. I mean, hats off to these folks. It is got to be one of the most challenging things to accomplish. So I'm very thankful for the work they do. And that's all we put in our product is certified organic. So that's where we set the bar when we bring the product in. Air roasting, no gas, so there's no crossover of carcinogenic materials that could even be possible because we're 100% air. And then after we're done, we also have regular mold and mycotoxin testing. Again, comes from the previous industry. I was growing plants. People ask, well, what's that like? I said, well, imagine growing full-grown thick fruit plants, and at the end they have upwards of, they have a ton of moisture at the beginning, but having to dry them to just under a percentage of moisture to not have mold, not have mycotoxins. And that's what we were testing for back in that industry. We were testing for pesticides, molds, mycotoxins, bacteria, all kinds of things. So having all those connections to the testing world and these accredited, very high end labs, it was awesome to be able to ship our products back to them and say, hey guys, I'm out of that industry. I'm in this industry. I need you to test this for me. Let me know how I'm doing. And we came back with zeros across the board. So all of our products are perfect, but that's all understanding my environment, understanding my environmental controls and how to store things properly and on and so forth. And so that's what, when you ask like, well, what sets you apart? What makes you a premium product? I think those are the things that really make us premium is our internal standards, our internal processes, and our knowledge and experience of maintaining things at that level. So that's in a nutshell how we do things differently.
And so from having identified this whole approach to delivering such a premium and qualitative product, how did you go about the selection of beans? Did you
Mm.
test, like, did you make coffee and then go and test it with consumers and then select the
Oh,
beans, or what approach did you take in that way?
two approaches. First, we had to locate and evaluate an importer. So your first step is going to be like you have to have a quality importer, and so we found an importer that's actually located here in Houston. They're a family-run business. They're a fantastic group of people, and we told them what we wanted to do, and we set up a time because they're in Houston, we're in Austin, it's a couple hours away, and so we scheduled for a time to go up to, or go over to Houston and do a sampling. And what that consisted of is that we looked through their offering sheets, and we first of all we filtered the offering sheets to certified organic only, and then we basically said set us up the whole thing. They have a big sampling roundtable, and so we scheduled a day, and they brought out all of these samples, and they made coffee. And from that selection, I'm trying to think. I don't even. It was a lot of coffee, and you don't drink it either, by the way, because you have to put anchors on your feet. You'll be flying, and it's just like a kind of like that. You take a sip and you spit, and you take. It's kind of a gross thing, but it's a process, and it's little spoons, and we go around, and after that, we probably had over 50 selections to choose from. Everything you can think of from every portion, every far-reaching region of the world. We had all the coffee in front of us: Brazil, Colombia, all of it, Honduras, Mexico, all of it. From there, we narrowed it to maybe 25, 20. I think it was like 25 or somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 something offerings, and they basically gave us a big bag, and they had these pouches that were I think they were probably like a pound of green coffee, and they sent us home with these, and they said okay, and so we said all right, now we're going to go home, and we have a little sample air roaster that mimics our big air roaster. It's a little guy, and we then had to sit there and run them all down, and that takes time. This whole process, to give you an idea, is it's like a month, or it took over a month to complete, and we had to run them all down. So you had to roast little batches, one roast, just to figure out the roast profile, or not even one roast. Your bag, they give you enough coffee because you have to get your roast profile. You have to get the coffee to the correct profile before you can even really give it a fair shake and see if it's worth anything. And so go through a couple processes. And so, yeah, sometimes we got down to where we had one run left, and it was like, okay, make it count, because the other ones didn't turn out. So make this one count. And so we did, and we got them all done. And then we went through that process internally, and narrowed it down, and we got to 3, and it was a hard 3 to get to. Now, here's the other thing: when you have no experience in coffee, in the sense of like, you don't know what the industry is going to take or not take, choosing coffee origins is really challenging. You have to keep in mind it's not all drinkers don't drink coffee like you, so you have to be able to have a very balanced approach to it, and not be so, and that came from experience too. I worked with growers that would only grow the products that they like to consume. And they were sometimes really heavy indicas, and without getting too far into that, sleepy or really energetic is another way to put, there's two sides of the coin. There's either really, really heavy eyes or more energetic profiles. And you get into this thing where somebody grows, but they narrow their customer base when they do that. And so having that experience and coming over to coffee, I want to be very careful that we didn't have our own, just our own specific needs in mind, that we kind of look at the market, like, what do people want? And that's where you come to ask, like, did we test with other people? Yes. We narrowed it down internally. Then we took our sample roasts, we took those and we gave them to family and friends and got feedback from that. And then we did our best to pick our origins and we placed our order. Kind of still a bit of a crapshoot. So for us, and gauging that and minimizing potential shortfalls, we did things with that in mind. Like, what if this doesn't take? What if that doesn't? What if this origin doesn't take? What if that origin? Okay, well, if we're going to do that, then let's get blank packaging. Let's get our logo on our packaging, but let's do blank packaging. Let's do labels for the first run. That way, all we're throwing out is a roll of labels. If this coffee doesn't work, just toss the labels, get a new coffee in, we'll try again. So we had some thoughts in mind so that we were minimizing our what potentially could have been our losses. What turns out to happen is all three of our products almost sell across the board evenly. In fact, we were told by the industry that decaf makes up less than 30% of your consumers. They didn't even say that. It was like 15% of your consumers or something. It's something low. Our decaf is so good, we're selling equally to all three of our origins out of the gate. And I do say that, I'm humbly, but it was pretty awesome to come out of the gate and have all your origins be hitters. I mean, home run hitters. They all have very heavy chocolate notes to them. People are loving them and they taste fantastic. And that was like a dream come true, because you don't know, when you get into this, you don't know how that's going to go. You could choose something that people just boo-hoo. They just do not like it and they won't buy it, or they buy it one time and it's but what we're finding is our customer base is actually coming back and buying different origins of our coffee. So origin meaning country, and specifically where in the country it's grown. And they're actually taking their own flights through our offerings because of, what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. Like, this is, everything is, I hate to use the word lucky. There could have been, but it was a process of elimination, and it was what we felt had the broadest reach in each sampling that we did. Each one we felt had the broadest reach to multiple customer coffee drinkers, and we steered clear of that real specialty, that real small percentage of coffee drinkers. We steered clear of that and tried to stay in broader lanes. So we only offer like a dark roast and a medium roast, because when you boil down the coffee consumer, it really comes down to these are the big lanes on the highway. The rest of it's very small. So people who want a light roast, that makes up, I'd say, light roast and any of these new, odd, weird sour blends that they're doing and these other things, that makes up less than 3% of the consuming population. I have no business in trying to be in business with those people. That is a very niche offering. That's not who we're here for. We're here to compete on the shelves at the market, in the marketplace. We are here to compete with what's on the shelves of Whole Foods, and not what a few people are drinking, in my opinion, but what the masses are drinking. Because again, when you're building a business, you're going to need a lot of people, customers to buy your product. So you need to be able to have enough of a broad enough, consumer base to market to. And some people choose that thinner lane, and that's fine. But we were looking to build a big company that can make a big difference. We really want to make a big impact in paying the gifts that we were given forward back to how we like to support the literacy group. Reading is fundamental, and that's how we're going to do it. So we steered clear of like really small niche lanes, got into the bigger lanes, and chose coffee that works in those lanes.
Cool. How I'm really curious about this, right? Because I think the topic of iterations and patience and expectations is incredibly important for someone who's just going into maybe their first venture, right? To give the viewer some kind of idea of the numbers, like how many people did you ask to sample your coffee before you placed your first order?
I'll tell you a couple things about that. When you think you have enough, try to double it. If you can, triple it. Get as many people as you can. We probably, so we thought, in our minds, we're like, oh gosh, we know a lot of people, a lot of big network. And we thought it'd be easy to reach 1,000 people. But here's a couple of things that happened along the way. One, it was harder than we thought to get to 1,000. We probably fell short by a couple hundred. I think we got to like 800. Of the 800, half of them probably didn't care about coffee and sure didn't care about what we were doing. So really, when we got to the sampling base, it was like 400. And that's really, a lot of it was real close friends and family. Those are the ones that, were probably the most helpful. I will say this. In some applications, if you're going to test your markets, you don't necessarily need to do it this way. This is just what made sense to us because we're and when you're considering markets, like there's lots of different ways to define that. And what I mean by when I'm saying in what I'm about to say is moving to Texas, we were in a brand new area where we knew nobody. And since we didn't know anybody, it was harder to perform that than it would be if you're in an area that you grew up or you've lived for a long time and have a big network around you. So we were, not only were we sampling, but we were shipping that product back, to Oregon. And we were even using people around us. We went to companies around us that had large employee bases, and some of that worked and some of it didn't work because some of the people we chose for those really aren't coffee connoisseurs. They don't care. And so your coffee is going to be whatever to them. They're like, great, whatever. Thanks for the free coffee. They didn't really care about what we were trying to do, or that we didn't even get the feedback from them. So the other thing I was going to say is when you're in it and looking back, one of the other ways that you could have done some market research, or we could have done market research, was like farmers markets. You can go set up at a farmers market and just put it up, just sample it. I remember listening to a different podcast, a different interview. It was a business guy that was, he helped consult for businesses. And I think this was great information. He had this person that came to him and was asking for investment, and they were a college student. They wanted to develop this app to where people could share clothing essentially inside of colleges. That's the basis of what they spoke about in the interview. And they wanted this big investment. And they wanted to just go build the app. We build the app, we'll be successful. And he's like, hey, here's some Scotch tape. Here's a piece of paper and here's a marker. I want you to write, willing to exchange clothes if you're interested, knock on door, and tape this to your door and see how many people knock on your door. Before we go spend $20,000, $50,000 on an app, let's see who's interested in your offering first. And it sounded harsh at the, it was like, whoa, that's like, okay, yeah, but he's right. Like, why are we going to go down this path if nobody's really interested? Because sometimes we think about things in our heads that we think just make the most sense. And then you put them out in the marketplace and they just don't take. And that, I do it to this day. We thought we understood our customer. But then we go out and do a few markets. We go out and get out into the public and we find out our customer is really everybody. It's not who we thought it was. We thought it was a certain type of person, a certain buying style. No, it's anybody and everybody that appreciates a quality product. So it's kind of a weird thing to learn when you think that you have it all dialed in. And so back to the market research testing, you need to find ways to get out there and test your ideas. Please do it. Even if you think you've got the best thing in the world, go test it, because you're going to find out and find ways to test it, whether it's your family or friends. They're not always, when you're asking your family, you got to be sort of careful, because sometimes family will have a filtered response to your idea or your service or whatever. It's like either they want to support you and they don't want to hurt your feelings, or, they don't want you to get hurt, so they don't want you to go out and do that. Don't quit your job. Stay where you're at. You're doing good. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Or to the other way is like, oh, this is so great. You're doing a great job. And maybe you're not. So you need to get some non-biased opinions, and the best people to get it from are people you don't know. Get out there. And like I said, like, you don't need anything. You can get a cheap pop-up tent and a table and go throw your goods, or if it's a service, go knock on some doors, run some social media ads, start first things first. You don't even have to be in business to set up a Facebook page and test the market. Just see what they say, see what people in your area, that's a great learning lesson anyway, to learn how to run local geo-targeted ads. So running ads just in your neighborhood or 50-mile radius, and see what comes of that. See if people take to what you're offering. Surveys using like Survey Monkey. You could put together a survey. You can email that out. Those are the best things. If I'm a service-based company, if I'm if I'm in the service world, if my business model is going to be service, go give it away for free. I know it sounds like, oh, what do you do? Oh, you're going to make, no, you need to give it away for free, because you need proof of your model. Go get proof of your model, make sure it works, make sure people like what you're doing and have positive feedback. And then that referral, that little bit of review that you're going to need for your website and everything, they now will give that to you because you gave them that service for free. But make some winners. I see a great example would be like maybe a personal trainer trying to build a personal training coaching online business. Well, go give it away for free for a little bit and get 10 success stories under your belt, and then go charge for it. But have the success stories, because you're going to need the proof, or else you're just like every other person out there offering something, and I'm not picking on that or anything. I think it's about the proof. You got to have proof of your model before you go too deep into it. And don't, do that before you invest too much, because you can't get the money back once it's in.
No, and thank you. That was a great answer. And so you come to Texas, you and Crystal both, as I understand it, right? For how long are you living in hotels, and when did you get something to rent or like settle, or what's that trajectory?
Oh, that's a great question. That was it was quite an experience, because we're planners. We had a plan, and we were in negotiations. We had picked a house in just outside. We wanted to be in Dripping Springs, and we were looking at some houses there. And our intention was, we've learned enough about, because we were homeowners. And one of the things about being a homeowner is, if you don't know the area, don't be buying a home unless the market's just red hot and you can just dump it if you don't like the place. But we want to come in and rent. We knew we wanted to rent because we knew we have a couple of goals in mind. And I'll be quite frank with your audience, is that we didn't want to buy right away, because one, we want to learn the area and we want to see what was around, so we could be flexible in that. We didn't know where our business was going to be, so we didn't know how that was going to work. And so and then after we do get to a point where the business is running itself, we didn't want to necessarily jump into home ownership. We want to go out on the road a little bit and see the United States. One of the things is, you get down the road, is that you realize, especially traveling out here, we just haven't seen a lot of the United States, and it's a beautiful country, and we want to go out and see it. So we came down with a plan to rent, and we're en route. It was a 7-day drive. We paced it out over 7 days down here, and we're on our way. And this house deal gets a little weird. They just, Texas. It wasn't even Texas. It was just the people. Things got a little weird. The contract got a little weird. They wanted some things that we were not quite understanding, and just so we don't leave everybody in the lurch, they wanted to access the home at any time they chose. And that was weird. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, you could just drop by and let yourself in? Yeah. No, you can't. I'm not okay with that. Wife could be in the shower. We could this is weird. Like, we could be having Sunday afternoon. No, you're not. No. And I said, no, you can have a typical 48-hour entrance like every other rental. And we've been on both sides of that deal. And I understand how contracts work. And I was like, I don't know why you need unfeathered access. That's just very odd. So I backed out of the deal because they just were weird to me. And I'm glad I did, because we got into here and we started looking at other homes in Dripping, and it wasn't going smoothly. This is it was terrible. We were finding homes, and we were being specific. We wanted certain things, and we were finding homes, and then they were getting rented out from underneath us before we even got through the application process. So we said, this is getting nuts. Let's go figure. We had landed here, found an Airbnb. We did do hotels all the way down. We got an Airbnb at a great place in Austin, in Dripping Springs, and the owner there has a big property, and he was wonderful. He let us park a vehicle there. As we worked this out, we went up to a storage place, put all of our belongings that we had with us into storage, and we took off. We went down to Port Aransas, Texas, which is on the coast, and it's about 6 hours south, and spent a week down there taking a break, man. We had been working our tails off for so long, and we were not people who took real vacations. So we took ourselves a vacation, and we decompressed, and we evaluated our business model. We thought about it, and then we started looking at areas of where we would want to live, and we started to go towards the opposite side of where we'd want to be lake life. We wanted lake life later in life, so start in Dripping and then maybe move out towards Lakeway or so. Well, it actually worked out better to go lake life sooner. So we ended up in a small town out here, and that led us being being on the backside of Lake Travis, and it allowed for us to find this perfect opportunity in Bertram, Texas, which is a very small town, 40 minutes or so outside of Austin. So you still have all the Austin, but we're in the midst, like we're in the middle of the traveling, like we're in a commercial business park, but we're off the highway towards a lot of tourist destinations out here, but just a beautiful little town. I don't think there's maybe 5,000 people. If that, it's a tiny town. And our little town that we live in is tiny, and we have a country drive to and from, which when you're building a business and you're running, you're burning the candle often from both ends. It's very nice to have a relaxing drive to and from work, that you're not sitting in traffic and whatnot. And I know not everybody can have that, but boy, it is that those little things are where the gratitude comes from. It's nice. I'm very thankful for it. But we would not have, if we would have ended up in Dripping, we wouldn't have gotten this opportunity. Maybe we would have been in a busier area, but it has a lot of drawbacks, very expensive overhead. And here we got a very good deal. So not having to be right off a busy road or having that immediate connection to that dense population really benefited us and allowed us to start our business at lower cost than being closer to the city or being in a popular area like Dripping Springs, which is a beautiful part of Texas. It's very expensive. It's exploding right now, and it's very hard to get in and out of for rentals. And we would have probably struggled to get good prices on a commercial property for our business. So we were very thankful, and that's how we ended up out here. But it was a struggle. We struggled all the way in. We took a little vacation over it, came back, and picked an area that was in less competition. And we had the choice. We chose from multiple properties. We picked the one that we wanted. Something for the audience to know: as business owners, you're going to be spending a lot of time, and you want to be focused on your business. So we were able to pick a property that's an inexpensive rental. It's a small house, and it has zero scape. So, I mean, the most I do is spray for weeds. I don't even have to mow lawns or anything. And that was the things that we actually were like written on our goals. Like that was what we wrote down. We wanted rock landscaping. We wanted low maintenance. We wanted a bigger backyard because we had brought, we knew we were moving to the heat. So we brought an above ground pool, and we wanted to make sure we had room for it. And we landed all of that, but it didn't look the way we thought it was going to look initially. And we were open and flexible, and we pivoted with the problems that were presented. And we landed in a way better opportunity, and we're very thankful for it.
Cool. And it does sound like a very interesting but also giving journey. One of the things you mentioned preparing for and then doing your big push once you determine what you're going to be selling and you had your whole process laid out, the building, everything, right? Can you give me sort of the specifics of what you plan for that initial launch? Like, did you already have the specific customer in mind? What kind of launch strategy did you use, and how did you try and approach people?
Yes. Okay. So we did have a customer in mind, and but the original model as we got into it was we were very focused direct to consumer, but we were trying to drive them to our website, and that was where we're headed. So we started to market we started to really, we had to go through the learning curve of the social media. I'm not saying I'm a pro, but we've done pretty well considering we just launched that a handful of months ago and we're building like crazy. We had to learn how to run those ads. But our initial launch approach was just going to be direct to consumer. And we just thought we could just take it and ship it. And we were using friends and family and local outreach to drive those sales, along with Google ads to social media ads. As we got into it, you can't. It's so difficult because you can't get the carriage before the horse type scenario going on. It went the way it needed to go. In hindsight, I would have done things a lot differently, but I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. So our strategy was specifically to market the business heavily on the internet and drive the sales to our store. What we didn't account for is how much things had changed over the years and how much people do business with Amazon first before they search anything else. So what I mean by that is that if you look at it from, I think people would understand this analogy. You had the local family-owned hardware store, and then Home Depot came down the road, and here you had local family-owned hardware store, but you had the big box Home Depot store over here. People started to go here. They stopped going here because everything they needed was here, one stop. Well, Amazon is that for the internet now. And I just, we didn't realize what we were doing at the time, but we were asking people to come down to the little store and buy one item. And we didn't know that the shopping trends had changed. People have gotten, it's a lot different. There's still a lot of trust issues, even though we use Shopify and we got all the protection. Shopify is, one of the largest website platforms providers in the marketplace with top-notch security. Doesn't matter. They have trust issues. Two, the return policies, they struggle. They want to make sure that they can just hit the return button. And I mean, Amazon makes that pretty easy. Shipping time. Jeff Bezos has done a good job. Prime shipping, 2 days. I mean, you can't, how are you going to? So as I'm getting into this, the point of the story is stop swimming upstream and go the direction the water's flowing. And once we put our products onto Amazon, it was like everything changed. And what's odd is we get more traffic coming to our website because of that. So inherently, people are first searching Amazon to find you, and then will travel over to your website and then support you there. And so it's like it lends credibility to what you're doing. And you got to pay the piper. People say what they want to say about it. Well, you can either continue to try to go against the grain and you're going to spend the same amount of money in marketing as if you spent it and put it over to Amazon and let them drive the traffic back to you. So we that was the first thing. Now, right out of the gate, we just got to some other outreach programs now, but out of the gate, it's just myself and my wife, it's a husband-wife team. And we use part-time labor as we need it. Like right now we have production running for today and this week. But when things go up and down, as you're building the business, is kind of an ebb and flow. It kind of, it changes. So we don't have, we especially in the beginning, we didn't have labor. We didn't have extra help. We didn't even know anybody to call. It was just her and I. So we were learning how this all worked, and we couldn't get out to some of the other things that we wanted to do to get some more exposure. Now we're working on those. So at the beginning, we simply were gathering as many friends and family. We were reaching out to influencers, collaborators on content collabs, things of that nature. We were sending out packages free. We're giving a lot of product away for free, which in a product-based business, be prepared for that, account for that. In fact, I'm going to safely say take your overhead and times it by at least 3. So for your marketing budget. So whatever your overhead nut is, you need like 3 times that just for your marketing to get a dent in the marketplace and be recognized as an up and coming brand, because nobody knows who you are, and you need to be able to reach them. So your marketing needs to be, you need to have a mixture. If you don't have the financial means to make it happen, which we don't, we don't have all of it. Your ground approach needs to be really strong, and that's that's what we started to do. Our shoestring ground approach is just getting stronger and stronger as we go. But out of the gate, yeah, we were just really looking to the platforms and using their marketing to drive traffic to us, and it somewhat worked. It worked a lot better once we got into Amazon. That's when everything really took off for us. So as we put our products over there, and we'll continue to build into their store. We right now only offer whole bean coffee there, but we'll continue to push into the store different SKUs. As the SKUs start to take off, you'll start, you kind of want to do it in a stepping process. Again, unless you have deep pockets, if you got deep pockets, do it however you want. But when you're doing it from a startup, with limited resources, you have to be strategic. And so we did what we could there. We kind of figured out how it worked. We went through a lot of working out our production, working out our roast schedule, working out, how our packaging schedule works, working the back end and the front end of the business into a schedule. And that's what those initial few months is all about, is getting your head around how your days are going to go. So some days, like we kind of split them in half, where we'll do the first half of the day is all emailing, social media work, video editing, marketing, any of that sort of thing, returning calls, outreach. Next half, typically will be packaging, taking orders, or processing orders, scheduling pickups, dropping off, however that needs to happen. And that's sort of how the days get planned out. So in the beginning, we didn't know 100% what to expect. We had our goals in mind, and so we just went and attacked it, and we just went to it. We had everything ready to go, and we started building ads, and we started running ads and learning what did and didn't work. And again, that's going to be a process too. You're going to spend money in areas, when they say you got to spend money to make money, they mean, yeah, you got to spend some money to get some data back. So we spend a lot of money with Google. Google didn't drive us any traffic. We actually got better traffic from social media work than we did in Google. Google took a lot of money, gave us very little returns. Oftentimes, if you didn't click the right buttons, our money was learning curve. Our money was spent in Indonesia, where we can't even offer them a product. We can't ship out there. So, but we find out after the money spent, we're like, what happened here? We had all this site visits, but nobody bought. Oh, well, look where it came from. Oh, well, you didn't click this button. So says the rep. Okay. Well, you don't get that money back. It's gone. Okay. But if I go over here, I can spend a fraction of that and I get all this traffic and I'm not saying that Instagram or TikTok or that is all your answers, but it is a much better platform. The marketing game shifted online, and then even more so as we got into it. That was good for us, friends, family, that sort of thing, continuing to reach out. But ultimately, we started to push our products into Amazon, and that's what really started to drive a lot of traffic. And then more recently, our approach is always evolving, and now we're doing a lot of local markets, and we're out there again giving away products. So we do a lot of sampling. So think about what you see at a Costco at the end aisles. Everybody goes for the little samples, or at the grocery store where they're sampling things. We do that on a grand scale. We try to do it out in the marketplace as much as possible, giving people a firsthand experience. Because if you want the fastest way for people to experience and purchase your product is to get it in their hands, get them the experience, get it all working in here, so they taste it, they experience it, they buy it. And if you're doing it right, they buy it anyway. And that is a stronger, more cost-effective method than anything else you can do. I mean, when you're marketing online, you're trying to build trust over the internet. And while that's good, what's better is if you can do it in person. So still, even at the end of the day, a lot of things are best, when it comes to product. I'm not speaking to all types of business, but product-based businesses is having that experience. It's going to be twofold. It's really good for the customer, and it's great for you because you get to get real-time feedback on how you're doing, and you get to sample test that over hundreds of people, so pick, like what we like for us, we're picking farmers markets that are operating in busy parts of towns. And we use those that get a lot of local traffic. And thankfully we're in Texas, and Texas supports local. They're very proud of what's manufactured here, made here, and they love supporting local. And we're very, very thankful for that. Weren't even aware of that until we got out there more recently, and we've really become, now we understand it. And so anyhow, like I said, uh, that's how we started, and how it's evolving is we're changing and evolving our methods as we keep certain things in place, and we add more, because you have to get exposure, you have to get out there.
From day one, how long did it take you using, because I imagine, selling to friends and families is one side of the coin, right? But, using Google Ads or using social media from day one, how long did it take you to get your first stranger sale?
We did get those pretty quickly out of the gate. We got probably 3 or 4 out of the gate. It wasn't, they did not rush the site. They won't rush your site. That's not how it works, I guess, unless you have something really, really different, or, it's just, they just don't rush your site like that. They'll sit and watch on the bleachers. We have, your followership will not equal your sales, just FYI. So just, you could rack up a lot of followership, but it's taken a lot. In fact, it was out of the gate, the first few months, it trickled. It was like a slow trickle, and it progressively gets better. Uh, but yeah, we had just a few, just 3 or 4 out of the gate. And but thankfully the product did speak for itself, and we kept like 1 out of the 4, is a subscribe and save. And then each month it's just like you get random ones. I mean, now, yeah, I mean, I don't know what all to say. There's no super success story there. It's not like, we spent lots of money on ads. We've done again, ads. And the other thing I can't speak to is that there's other aspects to that too, is like, what's your film production like? Do you have a budget that you can pay a professional to put together really quality commercials? I don't necessarily say that you have to do that. In fact, we really built ours on the back of the rawness of her and I building a business. Like, we really wanted to, the story we're telling here today is what we want. That's just how we do things there as well. Is like, when you ask about what goes into our products, we did little shorts about that. We talked about that stuff, and we talked from an owner's perspective, and we've refined how that looks as we go. Uh, so your marketing is going to make a big difference in that sense, like what is going to impact. And at the beginning, you're missing a lot of the crucial pieces to that puzzle, which would be proof is like how you're going to sell the product. So, having people have honest feedback about the product is going to help other people make a choice of whether or not to buy it. So you can speak till you're blue in the face to the camera and talk about how great your product. You need people to do that. So at the beginning, my expectation wasn't super high as that, in that aspect. It was a little bit, like, ugh, this is not going exactly how we would have hoped. But as we took it, as the data came in, we reflected and adjusted and improved it. And that's what you kind of have to do. So you're going to take a stab at it, and it's going to come off a little raw, a little rough, and then you can come back, refine it. Just keep at it though, and keep educating yourself towards the goal. Listening to others that have been very successful. Listen to a lot of those really big time influencers that have been successful online, and see what they're doing. And that's kind of where we headed. That's sort of the application out of the gate. Yeah, it was only a few sales. I think we had like maybe 4 the first month, of just random strangers, and then it sort of picked up a little bit after that. But honestly, it never really took off until we built those other credibility pieces. And you don't have to wait to get those. If you like, for instance, a farmer's market's a great place to test run a product, and then film what's happening there using your iPhone. You don't have to do anything fancy. You don't have to have any, CapCut editing software is free. use what's at your feet. Don't spend a bunch of money on it, but film people's responses. Ask them to be a part of that process. They are more than happy typically to support you, and that's going to give you that proof aspect that you need to be successful with a product, even with a service. I mean, there's nothing stronger than somebody saying how appreciative, how happy they are that they chose you to perform the service or chose your product. Those are things that go the distance with for others that are looking at you, thinking about whether I want to try or spend my money with you. This day and age, they're not. It's not the age of the internet where people were pretty excited to do business online and like buy things that they couldn't find. Now it's pretty saturated. There's a lot of crazy things going on. You need to build up a lot of credibility. You need to show, some proof. And those are the things that are really going to drive those sales up. So it was a slow start. It's picked up since, but the biggest thing I've learned is that when it comes to products, go to Amazon, take it to Amazon, have a nice website, and all those things are important. And I'm very happy we built those structures because they're coming back to work. They're helping us. But Amazon is where 90% of people start their search. So if you're not on there, you're already, they're gonna search your coffee, and somebody else's coffee is going to show up, right? So people like to buy with those easy to buy systems. So it already has their shipping addresses in it, already has their payment information. They know it's secure. They trust the company. It's been around for years. Everybody's there. Many people, you can look at these statistics, look up shopping statistics. And this is why I'm saying this, is that your question is great, but for somebody out there who's just thinking about getting started, this is something that I didn't find out until I was a few months in, and Amazon approached us and said, hey, we want to put Prime on your site. Would you be interested in doing this with us? And we said, sure. And in the process, we ended up opening a store, putting Prime on our website, putting products in their fulfillment and on their shelf, their virtual shelves. And that changed everything for us. And so I'm sharing is that crucial piece of information was the data that shows it's like 90 or 95% of people start their searches online. I could be a little off, but it's high. And 70% of people that go out to search for a product go back to Amazon to buy it. These are things that you need to know about because it's the shopping behaviors that are going to make a difference for you. If you're a service-based business, different story. But as a product, we weren't seeing the success rate we were hoping for on our own websites. We actually found that when we jumped on board with the conglomerate, the big company, that it then gave us more. We see more traffic on our site now than we did before.
Hmm. And so, in numbers wise, what kind of change did you experience getting into Amazon?
Oh, the numbers. Okay. Yeah. So that changed big time. So we went from selling, I would say, so yeah, so this is crazy. So once we went from selling very little weekly, maybe it was trickling in. Maybe you say you get, maybe 5-10 orders to like 100 orders to now it's starting to build because their system is so much stronger. The other portion of this is that other aspect of this is in the long run, we were going to look to bringing a fulfillment partner in. And so Amazon already took care of it. So as we push our products in there, we can scale now without having to develop this other half of the business. And that's a
Cool.
game changer, guys. Like seriously, I mean, you can try to do it all yourselves, but which is fine and maybe it makes sense to you, but for us and what our goals were, I was like, man, I really don't want to build out this whole, like, that's a whole separate, it's like you have all your, so we have 3,000 square feet right now, and we're already pushing the limits here, but we would need 3,000 square feet just to scale our own fulfillment, and then
Hmm.
take that and double it up and double it up. So you're looking at a lot of warehouse. They already have the warehouses. I can now look at my business and go, all right, we're doing good in America. Let's now move to Mexico, Canada, Europe. I can now use Amazon, already has all that structure in place for me to grow my business across the globe without having to hire another person. You can't
Hmm.
beat that. So all we do here now is big box production. So we do big production, we put it in bag it into little bags into big cases and ship the cases, and that's it. and as much as we can. Now, currently, I say that more. That's probably more the we're not 100% there. That's the ultimate goal, but right now, all our whole being goes that way. And as we work towards the fulfillment of our entire goal, that's exactly how it'll work. And we saw it as a smart pathway. So then when we did that, then the orders then shifted over to the website, because how we did that differently was because the fulfillment cost from an Amazon store sale is higher than if I sold it off my own website. We priced our website $3 under the cost difference that we need to cover to be in Amazon. So here, if you buy it directly from us, yes, it benefits us more. It increases what we can do with more, but over here, it has to be a little bit more to cover all their costs. So that's how that's why it drives traffic back to us, is because people come to the website after they've sampled and after they purchase the product, they've experienced it, and then they figure out, oh, I can just buy it directly from them. I can save a few bucks in the process. I'll just start doing it that way. And that's what we're seeing, is that's the business that's coming over. So we get the exposure from Amazon. The exposure from Amazon leads to more sales on our website than we could do driving our own traffic. So,
and so coming close to a full year at this point, what kind of you can just give a range if you're more comfortable with that. What kind of monthly revenue are you looking at?
As into this year, we're not that big timing yet, but we are going to be pushing. Let's see, what would that? It's hard to it's hard to give you an idea. Let me look at. I honestly, I focus on the bag sales more than I focus on the revenue, so I can tell you what we're going for. But yeah, we're going to
I mean,
be.
that's cool too.
Yeah, we're looking. Yeah, so we're looking to approach about 4,000 bags sold a month, and then we're looking to continue. Like once we reach that, we'll continue to incrementally increase it. That's roughly about 100,000 a month, roughly.
Cool.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
So it's
that
exciting.
must feel awesome coming from four a month. I mean,
Yeah, it is. It is exciting. I think that there's some things that happen along the way. Like, okay, so when you're in business for a while, at first you're chasing like this, you're chasing dollars and things. But really, as I've grown, as I've done these, I chase the goals. I don't look at that portion, like the financial goal, as much as I look at, if I move this much product, this will hit my goal. And so if I focus my energy here and I stop looking at that there, if I focus it here and I move this product, so if I find, so that means I identify opportunities of how many bags, how many pounds of beans people will buy. And if I can hit those numbers, then the financial numbers they work, right? They come. And so I know maybe some people out there go, oh, that's crazy. You don't look at no, because I mean, then I'm looking at like, well, oh, how much of this am I moving? No, grand picture, simplified. I need to move this much to be hitting this goal by this time. And so I can look and go, hey, if I can find X amount of coffee shops that use 100 to 200 pounds per month, then I can hit my goal, right? If I can find this many consumers, and so that means what opportunities do I need, and how many people do I need to see at each opportunity to hit that goal? Because there's way more math in that to get to that final number. And what I mean by that is like, so if I do a farmer's market, I'm hoping to see 500 people, so 200 of them will buy a product. 500 people, just because the attendance is 1,000, just because the impressions are hundreds of thousands, does not equate to equal amounts of sales. And that is something that people will want to, you definitely want to understand that portion of it, because you look at, like, somebody approaches you and says, hey, I got this celebrity, and if you do business with us, then we're going to get you in front of, oh, this is a great one. Influencers, I love their business, but if when they approach you and say, well, I have 3 million followers, so it doesn't matter. And you're going to charge me $1,500 for a post, and it could equate to 2 sales. Just because they have 3 million followers does not mean 3 million sets of eyeballs are going to see your post. In fact, it's going to be a fraction of that. You need to look at their viewership. You need to look at their post engagements, look at other things, and those are how many people are really going to see you. But to give you an idea, in a recent exposure, in a recent impressions, impression set, a small piece of data for a day, we had an impression at 39,000 impressions. So 39,000 people were served an ad. Two bought, two. Doesn't matter. Like the people don't know you until they know you. And so right now, my numbers I maybe need hundreds of thousands of impressions to sell certain amounts of products, right? So if that's the math, then I need to look at that, everywhere I go. So when I go to a market, if I see, like, we know right now, when we see like 100 people at a market, we sell about half of them. So I know if I see 500 people, I'm probably going to sell about 250 of them a bag of coffee based on my system. And so I know in a month, I need every weekend filled with that many opportunities with that many people at minimum to get my goal that I want to hit each day at a market, to cover the cost of the production of it, to hire the people to be there, all that kind of thing. So you got to look at it, things from your marketing standpoints. From that is that it's not so like straightforward, so many like, oh, if you spend X amount of money, like for instance, Google. So what? We had 1 million impressions and we had one sale. And I was like, whoa, this is not good numbers. But then when you look at how they're serving their ads, well, you're not even serving my ads to people that necessarily are looking to actually make a purchase that day. Now, I take that same budget and I go over to Amazon, where people are coming in like a market with their little virtual shopping cart and they're putting things in it. Now that million means something completely different. Million in impressions means something completely different to me. And I learned that along the way. That wasn't something I knew out of the gate. So when I thought, oh, well, if we just market and we get all these people interested in our product via Google, via social media, that this will equate to sales. No, not necessarily, because you don't always have people looking at your product with their pocketbook out ready to purchase your product. You may have somebody that's like, ooh, I like what they're doing there. I'm going to follow them and I'm going to watch and see until something entices them to go and buy. Today, for instance, I got orders right after posting free shipping on 2 bags or more. So right now, if you went to our website and bought 2 12-ounce bags, you get free shipping. Seems simple enough. I've posted before. 2 months in, I posted again, or whatever it is now. It's been a little bit anyway. I posted again, and all of a sudden, sales drop. Oh, so I've now been online long enough that some of these people that have been sitting there looking at my product and being interested in it are taking an action. So it's now things are starting to convert more than they did just even 4 months ago. So does that make sense? Like, I'm learning that there's also this element of people need to see you around. They need to see you becoming, either successful, or they need to see your product enough times. And some say the statistics now, they need to see your product 7 times before they'll make a purchase. So those things are things to consider, that just because you have a great product in your mind, oh man, we got the best thing, and everybody around you saying it's amazing, does not mean that's going to equate to, you're going to be skiing down money like Scrooge McDuck. It doesn't necessarily equate to that right out of the gate. So you're going to have to put some effort in, and you're going to have to continue to do be the greatest showman until people start to take hold of your product or start to take a closer look at it and look for opportunities that you can do that. So that's kind of where I hope that answers a lot of those questions. It's building blocks, right? So out of the gate, yeah, some people, you see some products that just take off. Well, they probably had huge marketing budgets and they're able to be at large populated events, or they're able to market big 10,000, $100,000 a month advertising budgets. That's a game changer. If you're just a small startup or a little guy or a small business, a mom and pop like we are, and you have a much smaller budget, you have to be more creative, and you have to understand it's going to take you a little bit longer to build that credibility with that customer to take action these days.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that you're focusing so much on that, because that is definitely one of my main hopes in doing these interviews. It is helping set people's expectations realistically, and doing it in a way that actually encourages them rather than discourages them. And
Yes.
so I highly appreciate that.
Oh, I love that. I love what you said there too, because I do not mean any of this to be discouraging. I just mean it as
No, no.
these are like you and I kind of talked just ahead of this. There's things that people, you often hear the stories after, right? You often hear the story after they're successful. And those people have already gone through this part of the trek. They've already made it. They're already down the road and they're telling the glory story, right? The, hey, it worked out. And while that's inspiring, what you need to hear is what it looks like along the path so you understand what that path is really going to look like to get to where they went. Because those people telling that story, they climbed a steep mountain. They put in a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work, and they stuck with it when it looked like they should give up. And that is really where the game of business is played. It's played up here. This is going to be a battlefield. You're going to want to get that. You're going to want to get this thing right. You're going to really want to educate yourself on that. You're really going to want to put in the work to understand what you're going through, what exhaustion, what burnout, what all these things look like, because along the way you can make snap decisions in moments of desperation. And when you don't understand yourself, and that's the stuff that you're going to be challenged with. And then as you're building your business, you have the way you think it should look. And I love that image. I wish I had it. I need to get a poster on my wall, but the image where it has like the person's like on the mountain, on this mountain, and their goal is on this mountain, and they look at it like it's like this way, and then it's actually all this stuff up to there. That's the best analogy of business ever. It doesn't look like the way you think it's going to look. It doesn't mean it's discouraging. It just means you should have a realistic view of what it's going to look like, and it is going to look like. So if you're like, oh, it's going to be like my job, but I'm going to be my own boss. No, no, you're going to put in way more hours. You're going to sacrifice more. If think about it, these things as you get into it, because if you do have things like a family or you want to start a family, you want to take this stuff into account, because there's a lot of sacrifice. The stories where, oh, my parents were never around when they were building their business. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's often what the case is, because it's like you can't have necessarily always have your cake and eat it. Sometimes there's just sacrifice. It's like, yeah, I would love to be doing some things this weekend other than going and doing my, just being real. Like, yeah, I would love to be on a vacation this weekend. You know what I'm going to go do? I'm going to go build my business this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And I'm going to be out there all day and all night. And then I'm going to come back Monday and I'm going to reset for our next sets of events this week. And I'm going to have to, and I'm going to pour into responding to emails and other things. Sundays, you know what a day off looks like? Honestly, guys, I would love to tell you what a day off looks like. It looks like from morning when maybe we'll sleep in till, if I can, if I can get past 6 o'clock. Typically I'm up at 4:30, we'll hit the gym, and then we'll go from about the time I get done and breakfast and everything is about 9 o'clock. I'll work from 9 to 1, 9 to 2, just getting caught up on some projects, not all of it, some things, so that when I go into the week, I'm just this much ahead. So I'm just that much ahead. I'm just creating that much separation and getting that much ahead as I push into the next week, because that's the differentiator, and if it doesn't look like you want to put those things in, make sure you're choosing a business that model that allows you to have the work schedule that you want. Because when you're doing something like we're doing, we're introducing a brand new brand to the world, or to our local community and to the internet. It's a grind, and it takes a lot to stand out, because I'm up against big coffee companies that I got to give people a reason why. Why are you going to buy Skyrocket over your favorite, your Starbucks, or your any of these other brands? I have to give them a reason why, and it takes me a lot more work than it does them to stand out to earn your business, and I have to work harder. And so that's just like knowing that that's what it takes. Understanding that is really important, and it's not to be discouraging ever. I want to encourage everybody to chase their dreams, everybody to go after their business. I love this model of podcast, because this is giving you the real nitty gritties of what it takes to be a small business entrepreneur. And you should know these things, because oftentimes I'll tell you, I didn't know, I didn't know when I started. I didn't know for my first few businesses. I was treating it like a job. It wasn't until I got in that last one where these plants were alive. And I started having to do sacrifices because your harvest schedules and your plant feeding schedules don't go on the days you set. They drink when they drink. You have to be, you know, so you're on their schedule. And when you when you start to get into it and you realize, and then we went from a small operation and we doubled it up and doubled it up until we were in this large operation. And it was like, wow, that's what that takes to get there. Oh, now I understand what they're saying. Now I get it. And so I would love somebody, especially if I'm young and I'm just starting out, to know these things. Like, it doesn't hurt to spend some time being under the wing of a great entrepreneur. If you can find somebody to work for that can teach you some of the ropes and you can cut your teeth, under their wings, do that. I have a friend that became very successful. Jiffy Lubes. He became extremely successful owning Jiffy Lubes. And I remember back when he got the job and I was like, oh, you're going to change oil? What are you doing? There's no future in that. He knew what he was doing. He was learning a system. The business was an already built system. And all he had to do is learn to do it, manage it and run it and learn the ins and outs of it and be amazing at it. And once he got that all done, he went and branched out. Now he owns 7 of these things. It's like you don't have to start something from the ground up. You can take experience and build on it. These are things that are existing. McDonald's, that's another one. There's tons of franchises, so anyway, you get the idea. But this is ground up. This is starting a business from a brand from zero to building it, and it takes a lot more hard work and dedication. Depending, 2 things: depending on how deep your pockets are to start, and then building it to a point where then you are attractive enough to an investor that they would want to jump in on what you're doing and invest in your project. So sometimes it takes you you got to carry the weight on your shoulders until you get to that point. And that's essentially where we're at right now. We're just on the grind. And, but we know we both committed to it, knowing this is what it was going to take. And therefore it's not a complaint. It's not meant to be discouraging. It's meant to be a reality check to make sure you know what you're committing to. Because once you start and embark, it's over.
Something I really wanted to get your eyes on, and now we're unfortunate that Crystal had to run off. But coming into this whole project, was it clear from the beginning for you guys what kind of roles you were going to put yourselves into? Clearly defined, or how did you attack that?
That's a great question. So here's something very interesting that kind of worked itself out. It worked itself out along the way. We did have some. That is a really important thing when you're going to be a married couple starting a business together. It's going to test every part of your relationship. Thankfully, we have we've been through a lot previously, again, in another business that tested us pretty heavily. But coming into this one, we had a basic understanding of both of our skill sets. I'm more business minded, more marketing minded, more of the back end of the business. She's very engineer minded. She's very good at the detail aspects. Very good with software, detailed aspects. She's the master roaster, guys. I don't roast. You don't want me roasting your coffee. I don't possess it. We realized that was the biggest concern I had for this business. And I told her right out of the gate, I was like, look, I think you will be amazing at this because, she digs into things and learns them very fast, whereas it takes me a lot longer to figure out. So when it comes to something like a software program, she'll have that thing. She'll know it in and out in a day or two. It will take me she in fact has to guide me through it because it just takes me a lot longer to figure that stuff out. And the roasting is very complicated. So roasting coffee so if you're thinking about coffee as a business, roasting coffee is very challenging and you need to really understand it. And so even though we didn't have any previous experience in this business, please do not mistake that we didn't spend a whole year researching coffee. We spent more, and not a year of spare time. It was concentrated time. We dove into every book, every piece of internet information, everything we get our hands on to grasp the concept of the perfect roast and what profiles look like and how you build them and how you get them and how you dial them in. Now, She dug into that, learned from all the pros. We took courses. We did all these things. She was the one that ran. She was the one clearly had the skill set for it. She was explaining things to me. I'm reading with her. That's her lane. Doesn't mean I don't learn her lane. I still, to be a competent business owner, I still understand roasting curves. I still understand what's going on. I get it. I just, when it comes to actually making the product, I'm terrible at it. She's amazing at it. She gets the perfect roasting curves. She does everything. She knows exactly what it needs and how to do it. So she's technically gifted and I'm not. And so she works on those things. She does a lot of the video editing. So her lane is very much in that. And, the technical side of things and scheduling and roast schedules and production schedules, whereas I will do the other parts of it. So like she tell me like we need 100 bags of this bagged up, we need 100 of that, we need 50 cake, whatever it is. She gives me the schedule. I go and put it into play. I organize it. That's where I operate. That's my gift. I say, okay, we got to do this, we got to do that. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to start here. We're going to do it. And even so, she'll still come in and say, hey, you know what? This will improve if you do this and that. And, I didn't even see that. But that's what we learned really quickly, really early on, is what we're gifted at and what we're not gifted at. So learning software programs, which as a business owner in this modern day of business operation, if you don't think you're going to have play a part, you don't think you're going to operate on social media, or you don't think you need to understand email campaigning, or you don't think you need to understand how to edit your own videos, I got another thing for you. It is a new position in your company. And if you can't afford to pay for it, which to do it right is going to be over $5,000 a month on average, then you better figure it out yourself, which is completely doable. Again, don't be discouraged. YouTube is a fantastic place to learn a lot of this, but again, it's something that we had to figure out who was good at what. So I can do certain things for social media. I do a lot of the scheduling. I do all the other aspects of it, the copy creation, all these things. But she's the one that went and took AI classes and learned how to, create things. And she took the Canva classes. She took all the CapCut. That's her lane. So when we learned that was really important. Now here's where wires get crossed and where we had to take another step. And this has actually ended up being very beneficial to our marriage and our relationship overall, which was communication. So we all sometimes think we're great communicators because we can say words out of our mouth, but communication is far greater than the words coming out of your mouth. There's a lot more. It's very complex. I highly recommend digging into it and learning what communication really, being a great communicator really takes, because that was the thing that was missing. So we would still kind of, have moments we'd butt heads and we'd have all these conflicts. And what we had to really learn is like, who wants to be a leader and when do you want to be the leader? Because you can't have too many, cooks cooking the stew, right? Too many cooks cooking that. You've heard that where sometimes somebody leads and sometimes somebody else leads. And so when we started to figure out where each other's strengths were, we also learned where to take a step back and let the other person lead. And so now we know when it comes to certain things where I take the reins or where she takes the reins. And that's in everything. And it's very critical because that was a friction point, a bottleneck for us where we were just having a lot of problems, where it was like, we both wanted to have an opinion about something, but one of us wasn't qualified to have it. I don't tell her how to roast and how to set a roast schedule because I don't understand it, and she doesn't tell me how to run the production unless there's something we can offer each other. Again, that's not like a perfect scenario. It's never a one size fits all. It's just understanding communication, understanding how to communicate to each other. And at the end of the day, how important you are to each other and how much that commitment is there. And to really don't take things so personal, because there's a lot that's going to go on in business. And this is kind of a caveat to the communication, is understanding that the amount of stress that business is going to put you under emotionally, physically, and otherwise. There's times you're going to be really overly tired. There's times that you're maxed out, you're frustrated, and you end up saying things that you would never normally do or say. You just, you know what I mean? Like you might have an argument over something that was like, you look back and you're like, what the hell? What were we arguing? What is going? I was really tired. I'm so sorry. And so, getting to that quicker and understanding that sooner. And really, I think at the end of the day, what we've become successful at is learning how each other operates and learning the telltale signs of exhaustion. We push, her and I are, this this is where Skyrocket comes in. We are pushing really hard to build our business, and we're building it fast, and that's what you see in what we do. You see our Instagram is constantly growing, our business is constantly growing, and production is constantly increasing. So nothing's getting easier. It's only getting more and more and more. And so we've had to learn as a good team, how as a good team would, how to work well together and when to tell each other to back off the pedal and like, hey, we've been pushing really hard, and learning how to take breaks. We're not good at that. We both we're people who obsess over, like we should work harder. We could be working, we could, but you have to learn when to pull off the pedal, and tomorrow's another day, but you need to rest today. You've done all you can do today, and you need to rest. You need to turn off the devices. You need to unplug, and you need to rest and recharge so you can actually be worth something tomorrow. Or if it's a weekend that we have that extra time off, that you take the extra time. It doesn't mean you go out and fill it with more things to do or friends or hanging out. It means take time to recharge your battery so you can come back and be fully present in your business when you start again that next week, or however that looks for you, if it's a day or whatever. That's what people are talking about in that. And so for us working together, it was learning our strengths, learning our weaknesses, learning each other's strengths, learning each other's weakness, learning theirs and her learning mine, or hers and mine. And then learning to telltale signs of when we've pushed a little over too much. We've gone too far. And there's times where I remember one time recently, I took a day and I'll be happy to tell you I took a nap. And that was not something I typically do, but it's like you push so hard, and the brain is like a muscle, just like the body. When you go to the gym, and the gym, after you tear the muscles, you got to let it rebuild. The same thing, you're pouring input into that thing, into your brain. Make sure you're fueling it correctly, make sure you're feeding it, and make sure you're resting, because these things play a role. But if you don't understand them, then they look completely different, and you make snap decisions, and you're not in your right mind, for lack of better words. You could be, when you're exhausted and overly tired, you might be really frustrated, and you might say something off cuff that would never, it really wasn't you per se. It was a tired version of you that was just pushed to the limit, and you just went over. We see it in kids. We understand when they're doing it, when they're screaming on the floor and they're throwing a temper tantrum. We get it. Oh, they're tired. But as adults, we somehow, like that doesn't exist, but it absolutely does. We just don't throw ourselves on the floor anymore. We just get real cranky and really, grumpy, and we don't want to work, and we don't, and it's like, you got to pull off the pedal. You got to step back and take a break. So when we learned all of that, and that, quite frankly, last 3 months, it's not something you can't figure this all out till you get into the trenches, till you're in the jungle, till you're in it, and you're relying on each other, and you need each other, and then you start to look at things a little differently. But I'll tell you, it also makes you a better people manager. You see it ahead of time with other people, and so you can manage for it a little bit better because you're aware of it now. And so a lot of it was becoming aware of how each other works. And then watching each other grow is pretty exciting too, seeing how we started and what used to just, what would push us to our limits. And now it's just like you elevate, you just continue to rise to the challenge. And there's nothing cooler than that, and seeing each other just keep rising and driving each other to, to do better and rise more. That's the exciting stuff. So learning each other is important. Learning communication will help out with that a lot. So pay attention to that. I think John Maxwell has some great books about communication out there. There's a number of them. I'm a big fan of Ed Milet and his podcast. He's got a couple of podcasts. The only reason I'm bringing that up on here is just so that that some people might search out communication. And he's got a few good episodes. Specifically, if you type in communication, Ed Milet, he'll point you to some great books about it. And that's really what I've done is I when I see something I'm missing, I go find the book, I read the book, and I apply what I learn, because these people, they have a lifetime of wealth of knowledge of that specific subject. So absorb it, become stronger, better, and move forward. But yeah, that's about that. I hope that answers that.
It does for sure. What do you think, in the big picture of everything that you've been through to the point where you're at? What do you think Crystal would say is your collective biggest lesson?
Boy, man, I don't know how to distill that down to one thing.
I mean, you can pick a few if there are some obvious answers to.
I would like to think that the biggest lesson thus far is commitment and what it really means. Commitment is, because at the core of everything is your commitment, and so you're only going to be as successful as your commitment. And so what I mean by that is like you're going to be faced with a lot of challenges, and you're going to want to throw in the towel. It's going to take your commitment to the goal to keep you going. Same thing in your marriage. Marriage is not something like, you get married and all things, it's all fairy tales. Relationships, truth be told, relationships are work, and they take ongoing work and ongoing learning each other. And it's actually like the coolest part is like you get to learn this person. You get to have day after day to learn how this person works and who this person is. And when you get to this type of challenge where you're deciding to go into business together, or you move out of where you both, I think the biggest thing for our relationship, and the biggest thing that I would say we've learned, is leaving Oregon, getting out of the comfort zone and moving to a brand new state where neither of us really knew anybody. She had a cousin that lived here for a minute, then her cousin moved to Utah. I have a friend, but he's like over an hour, almost 2 hours away. We don't, him and his wife, we don't really see them, but every so often. So it's just her and I. And that was a game changer for us, because we rely on each other. And so we had to learn how to be kinder, better, and better people to each other, and so it strengthened our relationship. Some people, it might tear them apart, but for us, it was like the thing that we were missing that brought us closer together and has made us better people. And at the end of the day, it's that commitment, because it's like anybody can throw in the towel. It gets really uncomfortable. And, I mean, I won't do it. She won't do it. We just aren't quitters. So we're really committed to each other, and we're committed to making it work. And I think that at the end of the day is the crux of all of it, is your commitment level. And so if you can stay committed through the storms and the ugly, you're going to get to the beauty on the other side. And it's really those things that will give you the beauty. It's really, if you're not challenging yourself, or if you're not challenged together if you're not challenging or trying to improve, you won't see this difference. You kind of go through life on autopilot. But once you start this path and you start to get seeing these types of things, and you put yourself in these challenges with your spouse, you start to see how each other works, and you become better for each other. And I don't know how else to say it, but the commitment at the end of the day is what drives that, because that in itself, anybody can give up. Staying committed is what gets you to the goal. And that's commitment in relationship, commitment in business, commitment to bettering yourself.
Skyrocket, right? Did you have any, when you look back throughout the year, or the year and a half, or the 2.5 years, did you have any concrete moments where it ever came on the table to consider stopping? Like, were there any times that were that bad?
Yeah. In fact, what led us to this and led us to this business and this conversation. Yeah. She was, I didn't even know, this is about 6 years ago. It started before that, but we were on the cusp of divorce, and I wasn't even aware, man. I had no idea. And this is long before Skyrocket, it's long before Texas, long before these awesome life decisions we've made. We were not living a joyful life. We were not happy. And she was on the cusp of leaving me. We were, well, both of us, I was 330 something pounds, had a real bad drinking problem. I was successful, but I was drinking all the time, man. Just could consume a lot of beer, a lot of beer, big guy. And she was unfit and unhappy. And but I was at a point where I wasn't diagnosed with anything or anything of that nature. Like I wasn't, but yeah, I mean, I wasn't fun to be around. I wasn't in good health, and she was really worried that I wasn't going to wake up one day, and she was probably right. And buddy of mine, same buddy of mine that owns these Jiffy Lubes, was coming to town, and he had uh, told me him and his wife would come to town. They live in Colorado, and they come to town to Oregon, and we'd usually meet up at a bar or brewery, and this is common for us. And he says, hey, I'm not drinking, but we'll still meet up, and I'll tell you about it, but don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. I said, all right, sounds good, man. And we meet up, and I said, what's going on? What's this about? I thought maybe it's just like, I'm taking a break. I'm going to, try to, I didn't, just things that you think at the time. And he says, well, I'm going after my pilot's license. And because I had a DUI in we're talking when we were kids, he got this DUI. They wouldn't let him have a license to fly a plane 20 plus years down the road until he proved he could be alcohol free and really suffice their qualification. So it could be for a year, it could have been longer, but he had to give up alcohol. And he's like, here's the thing, Chris. He goes, if you'd asked me to give up broccoli, I'd say, yeah, no problem. But the moment you asked me to stop drinking, all of a sudden I didn't want to do that. And I couldn't figure out why. And so I went searching for some information, and this is where our passion for books comes from. He found this book. And for your audience, the book is called This Naked Mind. Powerful book, very powerful book. And it really describes the ins and outs of alcohol and how it works. But here's the funny thing. He reads the book, quits drinking. That was kind of crazy. So Crystal is listening. She's like, what's this book? I want this book. She gets it that night, goes home, digs into it. The next morning. It was less than a month or so. I'm not going to tell this story perfectly, but she's like, finishes the book and she quits drinking. I'm like, shoot. And I don't know if you ever, I always liked that movie Pulp Fiction when Samuel L. Jackson's character at the beginning is asking to bite the burger, and he's asking for that guy's burger. And he says, my wife's a vegetarian, which pretty much makes me a vegetarian. Well, wife quits drinking. The writing's on the wall. And I'm like, well, I better check this book out. And no kidding, I'm in the book. I'm listening to the book as I'm farming. I'm doing my work. And she says this thing, and she goes, now mind you, here's the thing about a drinker. You don't think you have a problem. And my bank account didn't say I had a problem. My lifestyle didn't say I had a problem. My health did. Everything else did. But nothing in my measurements looked like I had a problem. I'm listening to this book, and I can still remember I'm bent over filling up a reservoir of water, and she says in this book, I'm listening to the audio, and she says, if you're working and all you can think about is when you get off work so you can have a beer, you might have a problem. And I stood straight up, man. I was like, oh, that's all I'm thinking about. That's all I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about how she doesn't know anything, and I can't wait to get a beer in me. I can't wait to get done with this so I can go get a beer in me. And that's when I realized I had a problem. And I finished the book, and no kidding, same thing, like a light switch. I haven't thought about it in 6 years. I don't count. I'm telling you, because we've recently told this story a few times. It's been 6 years. I don't count days. I don't count time. I don't go to meetings. I don't drink. I'm not a drinker. And that is how that transpired. And since that point in time, everything's shifted. And that's what brought us fast forward. We took on our health. We started to understand how to eat, how to exercise. We started diving the book. It kicked off this huge passion for learning, which I highly, highly recommend. We have this path of potential, and the sooner you can realize it, the sooner you can see it for yourself, and the sooner you can start going down that road. It's a gift, and it's the best you can. The sooner the better, because there is this thing called time, and I hope, and my goal has always been to help people that are much younger, like yourself, than I am, in their 20s, find this path, find this work, start digging into it, learn how you work, and you'll be so successful in life. And it doesn't take much. In fact, it's, a gym membership and some learning, some audiobooks, and you could be a completely different person. And so that's what kicked all this off and brought us. And I'm sorry, I even forgot the question because I just got to telling this story.
No, the question was just if and when you had any points where you were close to calling it quits, or if you ever spoke about it. I initially meant in the business, but I think what you told about for your personal relations is just as insightful and important, actually.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Cause I thought you meant I thought so. Relationship, that was the relationship. Business, yes. In the previous business, I doubled the business I doubled the size of my business in under 2 years once I cleaned up my act. So that story started about 6 years ago, and we were running about less than 2,000 square feet of grow space in Oregon. And I was listening to that book, stopped drinking, took on my health, started eating right, started exercising, started learning about myself and self-development, doubled my business in 2 years, doubled it, took over the whole property, leased the whole complex out, 8,000 square foot, built double decker LED grow systems, phenomenal grow. And this will help me get this done. I want to put this on my personal Instagram, so you can always find me through Skyrocket Coffee, and then it's chris.skyrocket for my personal. I'm going to post this stuff out there so people can see this, but it was an incredible build. There's no blueprints to it. Nobody showed me how to do this. I had to learn it all, but it was when I got clear of my bad habits that I was able to focus and become successful in what I was doing. And in that process of building that company, I still had 5 times, I know of 5 times, I call them my white towel moments, that I want to throw the towel in, like in a fight, where you just want to, where you want the ring, your coach to throw the towel in and just quit the fight. 5 times. And I'll tell you this, every one of them felt validated, completely validated. Give it a good night's sleep and see how you feel in the morning. Sometimes you're just tired. Sometimes you're just exhausted and you need a break. So your success is right on the other side of quit. So don't quit so you can have it. That's my advice there. In this business, no. This business, I haven't had a moment where I want to quit. No, it's because I took all those things that I learned and I applied it to something that I enjoy doing. And when I look at it each day, this is great. And having this conversation, being able to have this conversation and contribute to your audience, and hopefully they got some value out of what our conversation was today. That's what we live for now. I mean, honestly, that's what we do. I mean, we chose this because this is a great business. It's challenging. It gives you all different ways to express yourself, and it ultimately fulfills on our passion goals, which are helping other people, helping upcoming entrepreneurs, upcoming young people. I really, the younger crowd, there's things you can learn from the older crowd, and I hope to help people just avoid some of the potholes where I can. So no, not in this business. No, I don't. And I don't think we will here. We understand what we undertook in the previous business. Quite frankly, I got into it when it was very lucrative, and I didn't really get the pitfalls until later when I was already deep into it. And then I wanted to quit because it was like, man, your point of reference is different. So what I was getting for half the work I was doing. So just to give you a quick synopsis, and then we do have to wrap this up, is like every time I would grow my business, they would issue more licenses, and it would lower the cost of per pound. So if I grew my business, I was like, oh, I'm going to do it. And then they would issue a bunch of licenses, and the price per pound would drop in half, which dropped my revenues in half. Then I have to grow my business again, and it would happen again. And it got pretty old after a while. I like this business because it's not built the same way, and it doesn't have the same issues. And so I can build a business, and I can build a steady revenue with its model, and not have to endure that up and down kind of roller coaster that I was dealing with. And that was really what makes you want to throw in the towel, is you put a lot into what you're doing, and you don't know what's going to happen at each harvest. And each harvest is 2.5, 3 months away. So every 3 months you would get to the end, and you'd hope you got to the point where you're hoping to recoup your money that you put in, and maybe squeeze a small percentage of profit out of it. And it was like, this isn't worth it anymore, because I can't even determine. And quite frankly, all my friends went out of business. Many people crashed. I thankfully was able to exit, but a lot of people didn't make it. So that business, yeah, I want to throw in the towel a lot. This business, not so much, but that's because I took the learning from there and picked a business that I wouldn't want to throw the towel in as we grew. And it's a much better business model, and it's a lot happier.
That seems like a better pathway as well.
It's built
one more time.
Yes.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I say this business is built with love and happiness and a different goal in mind, and that's why we chose it. And we chose a business that has, and when you're evaluating business models, look for the history of the business, see what's been done. When I talk about there's no blueprint, when I was building that other company, there was no manual. There's no reference to how to do it successfully. You figure it out on your own through trial and error. If you start an HVAC business, lots of experience to pull on. Not saying it's easy. Experience, models to choose from, information that's already well established, pay rates, billing, all these things are already done. Coffee, same thing, has long history, regulations already developed. It's not changing. You can build a business in there. So just think about those things. Different businesses have different challenges, but make sure that those aren't the ones that, you don't want to face something with new regulation that's ever changing in an industry that's
where you're always going upstream, like you say. Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. One more time, what I was going to say is, where is it that people can find you? Yeah.
Yes. So just skyrocket.com. Skyrocket.com takes you to everything. So you go there, and then at the bottom of the first page is all of our social media platforms. We definitely always like to encourage you to follow us there. You can also find our products on Amazon as well. So you can either search Amazon to buy, or you can just go right to our website, and our website will be able to take you to all our social media platforms. You can follow us from there.
Absolutely amazing, Chris. Thank you so much for sharing all this time and all of your wonderful and helpful insights. It really has been really valuable, and I've enjoyed it a lot.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you for your time. This has been great.